What is up, guys? My name is PocketCraft, and today we're going to be talking about the top 10 theme decks in the Pokemon TCG online game, although this works for normal Pokemon TCG as well. And now this is all my opinion, so please comment down below what you think the best theme decks are. And then just a couple quick honorable mentions to point out that are still really good, but I didn't put in here and maybe I should have. Mock Strike is pretty good. The Groudon one is also pretty good, as well as Torrential Cannon. I didn't mess, but that one's also very good, as well as Tropical Takedown, Zacian theme deck, and the Zazamenta theme deck. Those are all very good theme decks, but I didn't put them in here because of a couple of different reasons. For example, the Zacian and Zazamenta ones have the issues with the meta. There's so many fire decks. But anyways, those are just the honorable mentions, so you don't have to worry about them. For the top 10, coming at number 10, I picked the Laser Focus deck. Now, this one is very good. Malamar's ability, Psychic Recharge, is very helpful. Necrozma can be set up to be pretty strong with Barrier, and then if you give it a special energy, Silvally pretty good. And there's just a couple good cards in here that can really help with a lot. The U-turn board is useful, as well as the ability on Audino. So there's a couple cool things you can do with that deck that's pretty good, but it's also not the greatest, which is why I have it at number 10. Now, at number 9, I picked the Rillaboom theme deck. And now, this deck is actually fantastic, and I would have it way higher up on the list. However, the meta, half the meta is pretty much just the 2 Charizard decks, and so you get such a bad matchup all the time with this deck that it unfortunately makes it a lot harder to use. But Eldegoss and Gossifleur, if you can start with those two, it's pretty much game over because you call for family, you can get Snorlax and a Grookey out there, and then use Blessings of Fluff and get them fully set with energy, and that deck can be very, very powerful. Now, coming in at number 8, we have the Galarian Darmanitan deck. And now it really starts to get hard here. You'd be surprised how many decks are fairly even, so it's really hard to come down to what the best ones are, because an important thing with the TCG is part of it comes down to luck, because you are drawing cards, so you can just get lucky or unlucky. But this deck is pretty good. It's got a great setup. The Suicune's all right. I really don't like the Aurora Loop. You lose so much energy. Kangaskhan with Rally Back is helpful. The Pelipper is really good. That's a really good way to set up Pokemon with. And obviously Galarian Darmanitan is just a beast. So this is a very good deck that you can win a lot with. So that's definitely a cool one if you're interested in that. Also, I'm pushing really hard to 1,000 subscribers right now. So if you're enjoying this, could you please consider subscribing to my channel, because it'll help me out a ton and I could really use your support. Up next, we have the Charizard deck called Relentless Flame. This one can actually be so powerful. Charizard can pretty much get an insta energy full, although it does involve putting 2 damage counters on him, which is a little bit unfortunate. Nidoqueen is very strong with her ability, as well as her move. If you have some setup on the bench, it can do a lot of damage. And then the big thing, honestly, for this deck that I think does a lot is this Rapidash. Whenever I battle this deck, the most annoying thing for me is this Rapidash, because if it lands a heads with the agility, you can't do anything to it. And it's super annoying. And so that is definitely probably one of the highlights of this deck. So it's a pretty good deck. It could possibly be ranked higher. I have trouble with ranking the fire deck super high, though, just because I know what I do when I play most times. I'll just use a water deck, because half the time you run into a fire deck and it's easy to deal with. But that's a great deck overall, so on to the next one. Next up, we have the Cinderace theme deck. Now, this one is honestly one of my personal favorites. And now, it may not be as good as other ones, but it's one I really enjoy playing with. The Flame Cloak on Ninetales is nice for quick setup, as well as I always like having Sudowoodo, just in case you don't get the greatest start. He's a good kind of buffer Pokemon. And then Cinderace itself is just really powerful. The Flame Cloak allows for quick energy bringing back after Bright Flame gets rid of him, unfortunately, but it does a lot of damage, so it's worth it. He's a lot of health. And then Double is also really helpful. With Cotton Guard, even if you only have 1 energy on him, he can still do fairly well. And then Double Edge just does a lot of damage, so he's a great Pokemon. And it's got pretty good trainers and supporter cards overall, so it's a really fun deck to play with. So I suggest trying it out if you haven't. Next up is one of the ones I use in tournaments fairly often, is the Inteleon theme deck. So what I really like about this one is it has fairly low energy cost for everything. For example, Inteleon, the head of the deck here, only costs 2 energy, and it doesn't get rid of any of his energy. And a really cool thing is you can actually get rid of one of your opponent's energy. So if you're fighting a really strong Pokemon You can kind of slow them down that way, which is really, really useful. And it also helps it so they can't set up as many other Pokemon. And then Kingler can be fairly powerful with just 1 energy as well. And then Mantine can bring in energy. Not to mention, it matches up very, very well against most of the meta, because most of the meta, like I've said, is fire decks. And so it's pretty useful to use this. And then Dreadnought is also pretty powerful if you have the time to set them up. Vice Bite, if you're fighting a big Pokemon with the retreat costs, usually they'll have 3 or 4. And so he can actually do quite a bit of damage to them. Next up is probably the most popular theme deck. It's the Charizard theme deck with Leon in it. And so this deck is actually, it's pretty dang good, I'm not going to lie. The Charizard's pretty powerful, as you can see with Charizard. And if you have the 2 Leons in there, his attack can do up to 200 damage. And you don't have to discard any energy, which is nice, but it doesn't have the automatic energy like the other Charizard. Yanmega is actually really, really useful. And honestly, every time I battle this deck, Yanmega is the thing that bothers me the most, because I'll usually bring in a water deck so I can take care of it easily. But Yanmega can cause an issue with that. Plus, with U-turn, it can cause all sorts of problems. So Yanmega is a pretty good Pokemon. Lugia is actually pretty good as well. Like I've said before, I like having Sudowoodo. The Magcargo, it's not the greatest Pokemon, but it's alright buffer if you can't set anything else up. But it has very good items as well, and not items, supporter cards, excuse me. So this is a deck that I'm pretty fond of, and a lot of other people are, so it works great. Coming down to the top 3 here, the really, really good ones that you got to watch out for. First off, for number 3, we're going to go with the Kyogre deck, Unseen Depths. So this deck is fantastic. And funnily enough, the Kyogre really isn't the biggest deal with it. The scariest thing is this Empoleon right here. So how it works is, obviously it has the Aqua Fall right there that you can see, which is 130 damage, but you have to get rid of your energy. But the scariest thing is this Recall attack. It can use any of one of the previous evolution's attacks, but just for 1 energy. And so the thing that happens most often is you'll use Prinplup's Direct Dive, but for only 1 energy. And that does 100 damage to your opponent's bench Pokemon, to one of them. You discard an energy. And so what happens is, a lot of times, because sometimes I'll be stupid when I'm fighting this deck, and you put up kind of a weak Pokemon, so you have time to set up a stronger Pokemon in the back, but then they can just leave that weak Pokemon up there and just take out all your other Pokemon on your bench, and you kind of run out of options. And so that's a pretty good strategy. It's pretty nice here. Fione, Whirlpool Suction, it's pretty much a built-in. You can switch their Pokemon. Ambipom I've actually found is very, very annoying with his bye-bye throw. I've had a couple times where he kind of stalls me out. And then the Kyogre with High Water, you can actually set him up fairly quickly. So it's a very good deck overall, and definitely one I'd suggest trying out. But now let's go on to number 2. So I think the second best deck, and an argument could be made for it being the best deck in my opinion, is one that I recently got into, and it's the Blazing Volcano Entei deck. Now this deck is insane. If you get lucky enough and can pull it off the right way, it has so much setup that you can do with it. And the biggest part of it comes down to this guy right here. The Magcargo, he's terrible in battle, but his ability Smooth Over allows you to choose the card to go on the top of your deck every single time. And so that can come up with so many different things. One, obviously, you can just get whatever card you want, right? Which is nice. And that can work out well with things like Professor Kooky and stuff. But much better than that is with Entei here. His attack does 80 damage. But if you discard an energy off the top, so it does 80 damage but discards top cards of yours and your opponent's deck. And then if there's an energy is one of the cards discarded, it does 60 more damage for each energy started that way. So you can't control your opponents, but if you have Magcargo out, you can put an energy on top of your deck, which will make it discarded, and it'll make Entei do more. Stunning Likeness on Smeargle is pretty good. It can give you some free kind of supporter card attacks. Blaziken here is fantastic. So not only does he do 90 damage, which isn't the greatest, but it does 20 damage to each of your opponent's bench Pokemon, which can allow him to take out multiple Pokemon at once. I've had this happen before. Not to mention his ability Firestarter. Sometimes I don't even put him in the attacking spot. I just keep him on the bench to have him keep setting up Entei's or stuff like that for me to use. And then there's Heracross here, which is really nice. He's got the powerful friends. So as long as you have Blaziken there, you only need 2 energy and he'll do 120 damage. And he's useful if you come up against like a water deck or something. He can do pretty well. And then Houndoom is actually not too bad either. Nasty Plot, you can look for any card you want. And Attack Operation, if you can play it right and make sure you have more cards than your opponent, you can do 130 damage. And so this deck is really set. I love using it. It's got some great items. Supporter cards. Sorry, I don't know why I keep calling those items. But this is definitely one of my favorite decks to use. And so I would definitely suggest trying it out in a tournament or something. And then the one you've all been waiting for, you guys have probably expected it. The number one deck, in my opinion, is Soaring Storm, the Dragonite deck. I almost hate to admit it because it's so overused. It's used pretty much almost as often as the Charizard decks, but it's really, really good. You can't get around it. If you can set it up right, and there's several supporter cards and things where you can kind of choose which basic Pokemon at least you get, if you can get Thundurus and Tornadus, you need hardly any energy, and you can set up a really powerful attack. With just 2 energy, you can do 70 damage if you've got Tornadus on your bench with your Thundurus. And then Raging Thunder obviously does a lot as well. And then Lantern is such a pain to deal with if you're playing against this deck, because you just have him on the deck. You don't have to set him up at all. You can send out 3 Pokemon, and the energies will come back to him. And then he can just do 70 damage outright, or you can discard the Lightning energy from him, and it does 140, which is a lot. And then the Dragonite, the beginning of this deck. Now, I like to use him a lot more as kind of like a supporter than actually attacking. You can use him attacking, he does a lot of damage, but you have to discard 3 energy each time. But his ability, you can put 1 electric energy and 1 water energy from your hand to your Pokemon any way you like every single turn. And it's possible to have 2 Dragonites, although that's pretty difficult. But there are several supporter and item cards in here that can help you get energy really fast, so you'll usually be able to use this ability. And you can set up Pokemon so fast, it's ridiculous. Not to mention Pidgeotto is great, as well as Pidgeot. Especially with Pidgeotto's ability is fantastic. And then Grimer is a great one, even better than Sudowoodo in my opinion, where you can send him out at the beginning. You don't even have to put an energy on him, and you can just start getting cards. And so this deck is really, really, really good. And so I would definitely suggest trying it if you haven't. Now, there are many other decks, and so please comment down below what your guys' favorite deck is, because I would love to know. But thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you have a fantastic rest of your day, and I'll catch you all in that next video.